And we're live. How's it going, everyone? I'm Joe.
I'm Ashley.
We are Geek to My Nerd, and we're here with another one of our BFF book clubs.
We should probably show our faces, huh?
Nah, that's not happening today. Except that it is.
What?
How's it going, everybody? Sorry we had to delay this one a little bit. We've had real life causing issues, busy things happening. Gotta adjust camera smidge.
Yeah.
Adjusted.
So yeah, this is the book.
BlackkKlansman. This is the book we're covering today. Gotta let the camera focus on it for a second. I think that even sharpened us.
Wow.
Intense.
That's just because it's so good.
It is. It's a very good book. It was made into a movie. It's a very good movie.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the movie twice in the theater.
Yes.
I think once at like a preview screening or something.
And we liked it so much we wanted to see it again so we could pay to see it.
And we paid to see it at a very special occasion, if you'll show the good people in a moment.
Yes.
Where we got to meet the actual Ron Stallworth, and he autographed our book. Oh, yeah, our name's still on there.
Not that people don't know our names.
Yeah, but still. He autographed our book for us. It was really nice to meet both him and his wife.
Yes, and I think she signed our book somewhere,
she
too.
Did. And yeah, it was just a really cool event. And in general, it's a fantastic movie. It's Spike Lee. I think this is literally the first Spike Lee movie I've ever seen.
There's her signature.
At least the first Spike, at the very least, the first Spike Lee movie I've ever seen in the theater.
Yes.
But I'm actually under the impression it's the very first Spike Lee movie I've ever seen. Starring, I can't remember her name. I'm going to go through everyone. It's going to be completely out of order. But she played Michelle in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes.
She was in this. I wish I could remember her name. John David Washington. Yes.
Denzel's son.
Denzel's son. There is a little resemblance, but he looks different enough from his father, which there's another family link in this movie that we'll talk about in a moment.
All right.
John Daniel Washington. David. God, I'm just so bad at this. I just heard you say the name.
It's okay.
John David Washington, who played Ron Stallworth. And it's got a bunch of other people, most notably Topher Grace playing a villain yet again. And David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the KKK.
And also
Adam Driver.
Everyone's favorite Kylo Ren.
Yep. I'm sorry. My favorite is Matt, the radar technician.
Anyway, so we're going to... You'll click over.
I will click back over.
So we're going to talk about the book in general, its key people, divergences from the movie and book, our gripes about the book, things we liked, and then our most missed from the movie, but also ways that the book was improved by the movie, because that does happen sometimes.
Yep, there are bits and pieces that are really enjoyable because we saw the movie first. Real quick, checking in on the chat. Cal's in Vegas, definitely giving us a like and a share. Thank you at least for that. Thanks for checking in and saying hi. I know I saw that Cal was in Guy Fieri's restaurant the other night, and that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, Flavortown.
I really hope that's what it was called. You ready?
Yes.
Boom.
All right, so BlackkKlansman originally came out in its first publication April 7th, 2014. Of course, Ron Stallworth wrote it because it's about his life.
It's specifically his memoirs.
Here is a quote from Jordan Peele. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe I had never heard about it. It's one of these pieces of reality that almost plays like social satire. I was immediately obsessed with this story. And this is in an interview with a Hollywood Reporter. Goodreads gives this a 3.6 out of 5 stars, whereas the Amazon rating is 4.3. This book has a page count of 208, and the audio book is 5 hours and 50 minutes long. So it's actually a really short, quick read. And this has been, you can see on the picture, this is the original release cover, and then the one that we showed you is the 2018 re-release that has some kind of updated information in it.
So we're going to get to the key people real quick. I'm bad at this.
Yeah, he took the computer away from me. All right, so of course Ron Stallworth, and you can see on the left-hand side is the real Ron Stallworth of today. And then on the right-hand side is John David Washington playing him back in the 70s. And I know that in some interviews that I read about Ron, where he said that I think he said his actual fro was just maybe a little shorter than what it was in the movie, and he had a funny story in the book about you get your standard issue cap. And the guy was very dismissive because, he's one of like the first African-American people to work there, and they wouldn't give him a cap that fits. So he's like, okay, I'll just, wear my cap, and it looked ridiculous. And finally, like the sergeant or the chief said something. It's like, well, so-and-so and the disbursement office wouldn't give me a cap that fit my afro. So, he just was very polite about it, and then the chief made the guy give him a properly fitting hat, and then he was real proud to wear, the hat that looked good, obviously, because you want to look good in your uniform.
Yep. Especially when doing your job. Ready?
Yes. All right, and then the other undercover, you have Chuck, the man who served as the face of the operation. And this is a picture of him that you can actually find in the book. Nothing's known a lot about the people. I think names were changed to kind of protect identity. It was only recently, in the past decade or so, that this information actually came to light. Jimmy was another officer who was brought in to serve undercover, so they actually had 2 officers in the Klan, and I think some other divisions got involved with it as well. And then Sergeant Trapp, who is Ron's boss that he reported to. And there's a lot of other police officer characters, obviously.
Ed or something like that.
Yeah, the one that tries to get in on things, but he's a very self-serving kind of guy. And, of course, the chief of police. And then there's the narcotics unit leader. There's a lot of people in the book that Ron talks about, but I felt that these were the most important for our purposes.
Yep.
And then we have the Colorado Klan members, Ken Odell, who was the leader of the branch infiltrated. And it was kind of fascinating to read about the way it worked, because we grew up in the South, but I don't know anybody, and we don't associate with those people.
Apparently, Pasadena at one point, in the 40s or 50s, was a massive stronghold for the Klan, and I think the area that used to be their land is now a water purification plant.
Yeah, but it was just interesting the way that the organization, as they call it, ran. It almost felt like the evil version of the Boy Scouts.
Yeah,
there's den leaders and all these other little packs, and it was really kind of creepy. So he's the leader of that branch or that den, and then Butch is the guy that brings Ron to Ken, because you always have to have an intermediary in these clandestine operations.
Cloak and dagger stuff.
And we have Fred Wilkins, who is a Grand Dragon of the Colorado Klan, so he's a big wig in the whole state. That was one of the people that helped Ron's application get fast-tracked, and not just David Duke. Yep. And then Joseph Stewart, who I think is described in the book as Ken's right-hand man. So, yeah. And, of course...
Wow. Holy cow.
Thank you, Tony.
God, Tony. But no, I had never seen a picture of Ron or of David Duke from that age, and yeah, I see it.
It's an uncanny resemblance, of course.
Pretty insane.
David Duke, the head of the Klan, which I think the official title is the Grand Wizard.
At this
they
point,
have such weird hierarchy. I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's all these words
Grand
that
Dragon,
are normally associated with cool things, and then they go and ruin it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had famously claimed that he could always tell when he was talking to a person of African American descent on the phone, and he would never be duped into believing that somebody who was not white was. Which
is hilarious, because he's telling this to someone.
He's telling this to Ron Stallworth, and so there's a lot of moments of dramatic irony of that Ron Stallworth is pulling one over on David Duke, and it was really interesting. One of the best comparisons that Ron had, because David Duke's public image was such of a, he's just a good old boy, and we're not going to say any offensive racially motivated language in public, but in private, the dude would drop so many horrible things that I will not say, because that we just don't talk that way in this house.
In general.
it's just, yeah, just the awfulness. So he kind of called him like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I really liked about the book, with the dichotomy of the public persona versus the private individual, and just the hatred that would spew out of him, and the way he would talk about African Americans and people of other, you know, undesirable, in quotes, because that's how they saw a lot of different groups. All right, and then the other thing that really is a big part of the novel is the fact that Ron was not only investigating the KKK, but he was also in charge of monitoring all these other opposition groups and their efforts to counter-protest the KKK.
The whole idea being that in the movie, they don't really do a massive point of like of showing this element of it, where it's kind of they just do this people of the police of Colorado Springs just don't want the tensions to boil over and become anarchy in the streets. That's what they're worried about.
Yes.
So
In the book, they were really worried, especially because the Black Panther Party was still very active, and like the United like Muslim Brotherhood, like they were really worried about these elements coming into town and starting up, you know, not necessarily riots, but, you know, trouble in their little town where they, you know, had not had a lot of trouble, except for this Klan that is trying to start from the ground up. And so these are just the various organizations that Ron was looking into and was actively, you know, they knew that, you know, he was a police officer and whatnot. They probably didn't all know that he was also infiltrating the Klan, but some people were on, you know, basically on a need-to-know basis. And the comment that he made over and over again in the book is like, these groups were not very organized.
Yeah.
Like their counter protests were very ineffective.
Like they were more passionate, more vocal, and there were more of them, but there was no centralized organization, which he kind of like basically says like that's what kind of makes the Klan powerful is they had an organization.
Yeah, they have a structure and hierarchy and
chain of command, basically.
Another thing that he talked about with the particularly the branch that he was infiltrating is like the people that ran it were totally dumb, total morons that, well, hello, Tib, that really could, like, Ken especially would like outright lie about like how many people they had and to just sort of try to make themselves look bigger and better. Tib. And then, of course, one of the important people that was mentioned in the opposition was Kwame Ture, or they really refer to him a lot in the book as by his birth name, Stokely Carmichael, who was like a Black Panthers and a great orator, and he had come to town to, you know, give this speech and basically try to warn the African American people that a war is coming and arm yourselves because
things are getting very heated. It's getting very dangerous. There's loud opposition. Warning. Is it just me, or in that picture does he kind of look like Totoro?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a resemblance.
It's like mostly in the mouth area.
Yeah.
Looks like each John Totoro.
You got like the same eyes.
Yep. All right.
Yep. All right. So we're going to get into some more plot divergences.
There were quite a bit.
Yeah. So obviously they stylized the title of the movie to include the 3 Ks of the Klan. And this movie came out on August 10th of this year, directed by Spike Lee, opened at number 5, had a budget of only $15 million, and its opening weekend made over $10 million and has reached a total box office so far worldwide of over $80 million. So this has actually performed really well. Yeah.
Considering how small of a budget it had, it's really blown its way. And it almost made its entire budget back first weekend, which is genuinely impressive.
Yes, and I love the tagline on the poster, based on a crazy, outrageous, incredible, true story. And that's one of the things that they tell you at the very beginning, like, this is based on some for real, and then they drop an expletive.
Yep.
And so one of the big difference is, of course, is the the timeline. Everything happens really fast, where the first day of the movie, Ron Stallworth has joined the police force. He's working in the records room, and then like the next day he's like in the unit.
They give you the impression that like it's like a 2-week period flat that he goes from being hired to being a detective.
Yeah, whereas in the book, this is over the course of
like 2 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Like,
well, like he wasn't even given a chance to be a detective for 2 years because he had like it was like a seniority thing, and it's like rules and policies and all that jazz.
Yeah, so things that took years to happen in the movie happen over the course of like a month.
Yep.
And so we have this is Flip, who's played by Kylo Ren. Oh, wow.
Adam Driver.
Yes. And so this is the Chuck character.
Oil Baron.
Yeah, the Chuck character, who is the white Ron Stallworth. And then Jimmy in the back, who doesn't really, he's like always kind of just in the background.
He's that support guy.
Yeah, and he doesn't really get to go in the clan. He's more like he helps Ron on the sting operations.
He's the guy in the chair.
And he's the guy in the chair. And then you wanted to bring up the family connection.
Ashley and I, when we watched this movie, we were like, yeah, because I think you were the first one, like, is that Steve Buscemi? Like in a lot of makeup?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that can't be him. And it's not.
It's his brother. Yeah, and I think we saw one review from the Cinema Snob, like, yeah, Steve Buscemi, and we're like, it's not Steve. Like, he could hear us on the TV. He was doing one of his live reviews. So, and this is a great moment when they're rehearsing, like, saying, like, all these horrible things. Trying to sound enough like each other to fool.
Well, they're talking about stuff like football and I don't know. There's a bunch of terrible stuff they talk about in this movie because they're trying to infiltrate the KKK.
Yeah, and like, I think in this, like, they're reading, like, there's one point where they read from like the Godfather script or something, and he's trying to get Flip to sound like him so that they can pull off their dual cover ID.
Yep.
All right, go next one. And then Flip Zimmerman, whereas Chuck does not really like have any kind of identifying characteristics except for like what he physically looks like. In the movie, Flip Zimmerman is Jewish, but he's non-practicing, so that adds like a huge dramatic element to the movie because the Klan does not like people of Jewish faith. They're part of the people that they really target the most. So this puts him at a huge risk. And
it's one of those situations too where they have a moment in the movie where he talks about, it's like, I never thought about my heritage until I was put in this circumstance, and now I'm like, wow. You know, they make a big point of it in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that he talks about, which a lot of people talk about in various communities, is like, people just always assume that I was, like just a regular, white guy. Yep. Like I just passed for white. So that's a
point they make.
Another big deal in a lot of communities is like, can you pass for the mainstream?
Yep.
And so I thought that does add a lot of really tense moments to the movie where, like, is he going to get found out because one of the Klan characters is really obsessed with trying to figure out, like, are you some kind of, expletive? And it gets really tense.
Yep.
But all fictional because none of that really happened.
Yep.
Okay. And then here are some of the Klan folk. Felix is the one that is like obsessed with trying to find out if Ron is Jewish, and then there's like a couple other nondescript members. And one of the things the book goes into great detail about is the fact that a lot of these guys are like military men that are from the nearby army base. A couple of them have NORAD clearances. Yep. So it's really scary because these people have access to weapons of mass destruction, from the 1970s equivalent of that.
Well, I mean, they have access to military grade
explosives and such. So
none of this homemade bomb stuff. They can get bricks of C4.
Yeah.
I mean, they're stealing it, but.
And then one of the big elements, of course, that they're trying to disrupt the Black Student Union, who is like the primary
they represent
foil to the Klan in this movie, and they're trying to assassinate the leader of the Black Student Union, who is Ron's love interest, Patrice.
Which is of itself a big divergence.
Yes, because she's not in the movie, but like this,
she's not in the book.
Yeah, sorry, she's not in the book. But this whole terroristic side of it, that none of this is based in the memoir. The most that they ever talked about, but they didn't really achieve any of their goals, thankfully. They were going to try to bomb a gay nightclub in Denver, but that didn't come to fruition. They tried to do a bunch of cross burnings, but that didn't come to fruition because of the efforts of Ron and his team. And so these guys meet to a very fiery end in the movie, and their wives are involved as well, which I thought was a very interesting element.
Unsurprising.
And then this character, I can't remember the exact character's name, but he's played by Harry Belafonte, who's a African-American man who has witnessed a horrific crime, and he's kind of talking to the Black Student Union about what he witnessed, and kind of like a parallel to, like, these things in society have not changed, these ideals. And the lynching that he's talking about here happened right around the time that Birth of a Nation came out. And so they believe that there's a connection between that movie and the crime. And the Birth of a Nation is a common tool that the Klan uses to, like, not necessarily recruit, but like inspire and empower their members. And like, we asked Ron Stallworth about that, and he said, no, they really do show that movie frequently as their recruitment tool.
In the movie, it's like they kind of show you that they're watching it at one point.
Yeah,
in the book, they talk about like it being shown like 2 or 3 times
regularly, whereas in the movie, it's like the one time after they've all been indoctrinated or inducted into the society. And so this was a very powerful parallel, because you see like all this like horrible action happening at the time that he's recounting this story. And I think this is supposed to parallel a story that's in the memoir that's different, that has kind of a totally different tone, where a young African-American man had murdered somebody in cold blood, and then the community was trying to offer support, and they brought this civil rights leader to talk to them, but they didn't give the civil rights leader all of the information.
Yep.
And so I can see why they would change that for the movie. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, Patrice is a totally fictional character, obviously based off of a lot of strong African-American women leaders, but she's not not
mentioned at all in the memoir.
Yeah, she's not real. Ron Stallworth, I think, was already married when he was doing all of this, or at least he was dating his current wife. Yep. So this totally fictionalized Hollywood romance to kind of add some interest and drama, because she's very much against the police.
Yep.
And when she finds out that Ron is a police officer, she's highly offended that she was lied to, and, naturally so. And, the fact that he was undercover, whatnot.
So here's where we get to the gripes. And I would say there's not a whole bunch.
Yeah, there's really only one picture to depict our generalized gripes. And so I picked this picture of them on the stakeout, because stakeouts are very, very procedural and matter of fact.
And while they might be exciting, they're also very dry. Yes,
and the book is a very dry telling of the story, if you'd like to talk about it, Joe.
So my big issue is the fact that, and again, it's not that much of an issue. It is a fascinating story that is very interesting historically, and it is told from the point of view of the man who lived it, and it's exciting in that regard, but it's like reading a police report. Everything is staked incredibly matter, and it's not only the fact that it is based on a police situation, but this is a police officer writing it. So, old habits die hard. Yeah. It's not the same thing, I know, but I did work security for a while, and we had to fill out reports whenever there was an apprehension in case it was ever used in court. And I understand it has to be basically
just the facts.
This is what I saw. This is what went down. This is what occurred afterwards. This is
No
what happened. We brought him back, and this is what I'm doing right before I write this thing.
Yeah, we have to be the same way if we ever have to write a discipline referral at school. Like, what happened? No emotion, just like what happened? What did they do?
Yep. And it's not, again, it's not that it's bad. It's just, it's a very difficult read. You said that, like you said, this was a 5.5 hour read roughly. And I started this myself over a week ago and just got to the end today. And it's just so, I'm trying to think of a good word because it's not
like anticlimactic.
It's not even anticlimactic. It's anti enticing. Like I want to get to the information, and it's really good. There's lots of parts that you talked about were intense, and I didn't feel intensity at all.
There's one part that I felt was kind of intense, and it might have only been because it wasn't depicted in the movie, but there was one moment where Jimmy fills out the paperwork at the Klan meeting, and he signed his real name, but they have undercover names, and so he had to try to strategically get a new thing, and Ken had pocketed the paper that had the wrong information on it. And so then they had to think of like another way to get it back from him. So I was like, oh my gosh, they delayed the response of what happened. So like for that little tiny moment, there was that intensity because, Ken's not very smart. So he probably would be like I don't even like
maybe that was a nickname in school. Yeah,
or something like that.
But because it's told in a procedural fashion, I was just like, oh, okay, that happened. That's how it felt to me. Everyone's going to get different experiences from this story. It's like I acknowledge everything that happened as an interesting and intense story. It's just, it's like reading a textbook or an electronics manual. I understand why it's important and I love it. But
yeah, it's a little dry, and there's several places where he'll introduce information that we've already heard, and they're introducing it to you like you've never heard it before, and that was frustrating.
There are two parts where he talks about when they're detailing how to light a cross for a cross burning, where he explains early on, like 5 chapters earlier, the same thing he explains in like chapter 11, which is they do it by using a matchbox and then lighting a cigarette that they picked up from a James Bond movie. And then when he talks about it later, where he talks about setting it up and doing it just like he did like you saw from the James Bond movie. I'm like,
yeah, I think they mentioned that a few times where it was like the same description. So just, it needed a little bit more variety and to, realize that, yes, we've introduced this information. So there's got to be a different way to say it.
Yep.
But those are really the only gripes that we had.
Huge. But we're getting to the likes.
All right. So I really liked in the book how it talked when he's going undercover for the first time at the Kwame Ture rally, for lack of a better term, and the fact that like he was like excited and empowered by the speech, and he's kind of worried about how the listening officers are going to interpret like his like enthusiasm for what the guy was saying, like if they'll like question his motives. So I thought that was a really cool little moment. Because
in the movie especially, this was a point in the story where he wasn't even technically a detective yet. They just needed his help for this.
Yeah.
But this was also his way to get into being a detective and undercover detective and such.
And then I loved all the phone calls with Stallworth and Duke because of
both the movie and the book.
Yes, the dramatic irony of Duke having no clue, and then at one point he does tell Ron, like, I know when somebody is not white by the way that they say the word R. See, like you and I, we say it the proper way, that the way it was intended, whereas other people say Ara. Yep. And so then Ron says...
In the book, he talks about, like, basically from every conversation they've ever had from that point on.
He said Ara.
He says Ara on purpose. He goes out of his way to use it.
It was like his little jab. But in the movie, the way they do it, it's like the final phone call. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, Ara, you sure?
Yeah.
Ara, you sure? And then I think he says some other kind of definite, like, I'm a black...
It's like he pulls out he had written down. It's all these like just slanderous toward David
Yeah.
Duke that he's reading off, yelling at him.
And then like the whole station's there and they're all laughing and he hangs up on him and David Duke looks so confused. And of course in real life, like David Duke only found out that Ron Stallworth was black like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 or 12 years ago. He had no clue because somebody like called him to confirm Ron's story, because they really did destroy, or he was ordered to destroy all of the records. But you know, just if you take them to your house and don't tell anyone they're there,
yep.
what are they gonna do? No one ever asked him about it.
But it's really funny because he told us a story too that like right before the movie came out, David Duke called him at his house.
Oh yeah, he was worried about looking like
gonna look.
Yeah, he was worried about his public image. Like, dude, you got bigger problems.
I don't think this movie's gonna hurt your public image anymore.
You're already ruining your public image by being who you are, just by being David Duke and trying to support all of the nonsense that's happening in the world.
But it's really funny because he said like we talked for about 30 minutes and we were friendly and cordial, and then at the end he's like, so you're gonna try and use this for your like podcast or something, yes. Right? And he's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and then
apparently David Duke said glowing things about the movie on his podcast or something. I don't know. He was talking about it. It was pretty fantastic.
One of the things I also liked in the movie is like when the Klan guys are driving around in their car, like they're listening to these like David Duke radio like fireside chats. Yep. And it just kind of made me think of like all those ones you hear in Grand Theft Auto where it's like the awkward guy, or like on Fallout with Travis. Yes, the awkward Travis, because it just sounds so wrong.
Tobey Maguire really does a fantastic job with
Topher Grace.
Topher Grace. Yeah, whatever. They were both in a Spider-Man movie. Topher Grace does a fantastic job with this role too. And I know he was in one of the interviews, he was super worried about portraying this. He's like, I'm gonna have to say things I really don't want to say. But they apparently went out of their way to ask for him, and so
yeah. Go to the next one. And then, of course, the whole idea of them talking, and especially in the movie, like everyone is like laughing their butts off because this is just so ridiculous. Like happened to like, especially the first time like Ron Stallworth says all of these horribly racist things about black
like all
people.
The detectives are just like slowly...
black people and all the other people that the Klan really hates, and it's just like, what did he just say? And just reading it in the book and then like listening to the audiobook and hearing Ron Stallworth say those things that he had to say to, to go undercover.
What's really hilarious is the movie, it handles that he basically just says on the phone his name and all this other stuff.
Yeah, like he wasn't thinking.
In the book, it's handled in a much smarter way, because he explains like, when I signed up to get this paper, when I sent a letter to get this paperwork, I signed my name because I thought that would be the end of it.
Yeah, like
they called him and all sorts of other stuff.
He never intended it to be some kind of investigation. It was just like, I want to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
So that the police department's aware of it.
Intel.
Yeah, but he did use the undercover address.
Yep.
So that did help them, because there's a moment in the movie where like Felix gets a little excited and goes to Ron's house, and a black man, and the real Ron answers.
They have to confront Flip about it, and
he's like, "There was a black person where you
that
live."
Guy?
Yeah, like, oh, I don't live at that address. I live somewhere else. My phone's unlisted. So
come by sometime.
Yeah, so that's another interesting. And then this moment this is probably one of the best moments in the book. Him describing the fact that he had to be the personal bodyguard of a man that hated him.
Yeah.
And Duke never realized that he was talking and interacting with a person that was actually the guy on the phone.
And this scene in the movie is almost shot for shot from the book.
Yes.
There's like one small difference, or two small differences. Like one, there were more people in the photo. But even to the point where the same person that was the undercover officer
takes the picture,
takes the photo for him, and he like, at first he tries to do the arms around them thing, and Duke's like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah,
I'll
like,
be in a picture with you,
don't touch me.
But I can't be buddy with you.
Yeah, I can't have that be seen in public. And then on 3, and he
does
it.
Yeah, and then he does it, and then he
grabs the camera and the picture real quick.
He explains like, like they basically race to get the photo, but Ron's just a little faster.
And he's like, if you touch me, I will have you arrested for assaulting an officer. And
beat for beat.
Yeah, sadly, the photo does not exist anymore.
Well,
it's a
he says he can't find it.
Yeah, it's a Polaroid. So
he has framed somewhere.
Yeah, but it doesn't
under like 30 some odd boxes.
Yeah, so it's somewhere. I would love to see it.
Yeah, we did get to see his card.
Yes.
He had his card.
Yes,
I
have in the presentation.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, there's a really cool thing in the book that has these little inserts of pictures. So here we have like a picture of Ron from back then and his police ID. And the only thing that I had a gripe about this is that they're not in color. I thought that would have been cool, but you know, color does cost a lot of money. So here we see the Kwame Ture and some other things in his Klan card, and I think this is his application. The fact that he still has that's interesting, and then some other propaganda materials and newspaper articles. So I like it when books have these little realia moments, and then here's this certificate of membership, and then there's like a picture of Chuck and David, and then Chuck, Jim, and David at the rally. So a lot of cool things, and then here's NORAD, and then civil rights leader. So that was really cool. We got to see Ron's card.
He had it there.
He carries it with him in his wallet. Is technically still a member, I guess.
Well, he was in good standing. He probably didn't pay his yearly dues.
Yeah, I doubt he was giving them money. And then they had to pay for all of the Klan stuff out of like the petty
$40 for the robes.
Yeah, the petty cash, and they wouldn't give them money for the robes. It's like, we're not paying for this.
Yeah. From
the police. So all right. So now we're gonna talk about some moments that were most missed from the movie. And so for me, like, I really wanted to, after reading about him going to NORAD and the way he described it, like, I wanted to see Ron Stallworth in NORAD.
Which they addressed this scene, but not at NORAD. Like, in the movie, it's like he meets some guy at, like, a busted-up looking industrial area.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not even that, like, they drag him there. He meets, like, an agent there, and he's like, oh, yeah, there's two guys that work for the State Department. They're, like, upper echelon clearance for the State Department, and we just need to know about them so we can keep an eye on them. Yeah, and then where they get fired. Yeah. Like, they get fired. They get sent to the North Pole. Yes. Are the exact words. Because they don't want that kind of business in the government. Especially in dealing with, like, defending the nation from nuclear attack. Yes. Because this was, like, the 70s. Yeah, this was still during the Cold War. Yeah. Probably some of the hotter, not the hottest times of the Cold War, because that's, like, the 60s. Yeah. But the 70s are, like, they're still very real. Tensions were high. Space program, space race was still going on. Yep. And then this idea that was really explored very well in the book, but was not really touched upon at all in the movie, is the idea of entrapment. So in the movie, because again, we saw the movie before you read the book. Yeah. In the movie, they talk about, like, well, we want Ron to be the leader, like Ken, who's the head of the local chapter, the Colorado Springs chapter. Yeah. Nominated Ron to be the leader, and there was, like, Felix had issues with it, but most of everyone else was fine with it. Yeah. Because apparently Adam Driver's just charismatic. I see it. I get it. Yeah. Apparently, and then in the memoir, they talk about how, like, Ron was just so vitriolic in his dealings with everybody on the phone, and about how passionate he was so that he could try to get into the inner circle, that they thought that everybody in the den agreed that Ron should be the leader, and he really there's a moment where he was conflicted. In the movie, there's a really solid moment where they go into probably why he's so widely accepted by literally everyone else there, and it's when Felix is confronting him, because Felix still thinks he's Jewish, and Felix talks about how, like, the Holocaust didn't even happen, and all sorts of stuff, and Flip, thinking on his feet, is just like, no, it had to happen. That sounds like an amazing thing, says Flip, and it's just like, if you think about it from the point of view of somebody who's terrible, like, the idea of that happening, if you hated that group. Yeah. No, I get. Yeah. No, it's not a good thing. But then you see Felix's face, and he's like, "What? Yeah. Wait, what? Yeah, because not smart. But in the book, they talk about why he doesn't accept the position of leadership. And it's because it would be entrapment. And they don't even address that in the movie. And it would have been nice if they did.
Yeah.
Because they just go from like, well, they kind of want Ron to be the leader to the next scene being like, he's like, no, I can't do it.
Yeah,
I'm busy doing
my
stuff.
dad's sick. He makes up excuses, but in the book, like he really does think about it, and he tries to think of ways where
they could
make it work and it not be entrapment. Because entrapment is where like you
fruit of the poison tree.
Yeah, you encourage someone to commit a crime so that you can bust them, basically.
Yeah,
something that they wouldn't have otherwise done. And so, like obviously, like Ron and the counterparts never participated in any kind of illegal activity and never encouraged it, so they had to be very careful.
Yep.
But they did prevent a lot of crimes, especially cross burnings, from happening.
And that's something he talks about in the book, and they make a point of in the movie, is during the entire scope of the investigation, which in the movie is kind of like, I mean, there was going to be one. Yeah. But in the book, it's like that's like what, 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, so they went for a long time
with no cross burnings.
And then finally, when Ron was asked to avow himself or whatever, that's when like the first cross burning happened after he no longer had contact with the Klan, and they actually burned a cross in front of the nightclub where Kwame Ture had given his speech, because something else had happened there, and they were trying to. The Klan views the cross burnings. They don't see it as sacrilege. They see it as a religious experience. That it's really just messed up. This is like the worst group.
Yep.
So yeah, and I wish they would have talked about the entrapment
a little bit more.
All right, and then the most improved by the movie,
which there was some.
So I just really loved the fact that they did make this character a Jewish character, because I think it just adds so much more stakes, or so much more.
It's more than just one person's story.
Yes, like
and adding the level that the character of Flip, who is Chuck in the book, is also Jewish, adds more depth to it, because he represents other elements of things going on in the world where they didn't realize that, yeah, this affects them too, even if it, wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, because again, he talks about like he could pass for just like a regular white American, male. But, he is Jewish, even though he didn't practice, that he sees that this is a bigger deal than just like Ron having his agenda.
Yep.
And they really kind of like portray it a lot as like Ron's agenda, whereas in the book, it's just like, no, we need to stop the Klan.
Yeah.
And like in the movie, it's like Ron's mission.
Yeah.
So I thought that this really helped the movie. It added those stakes and that tension.
It was a very good shorthand way to inject tension into it.
Mm-hmm. And then if you go back real quick,
because we're not done.
Yeah, the other thing that I really liked about the movie, and I couldn't find a picture of this, was the fact that they did involve Felix's wife in the Klan's activities, because if you know anything about like clandestine operations and spycraft, women and children are not noticed. Like women are invisible, so they are your perfect agents. That's why like things like Red Sparrow and all of those things are a thing. Nobody's going to suspect a woman or a child.
Same thing with there's a huge deal in Africa for a long time, the concept of child soldiers.
Yeah, nobody's going to believe a child is capable of these things. And so he incorporates his wife in the plot. And so and I think that's like a really good analogy to like a lot of the women of today that are very dismissive of like feminism and other rights issues, the ones that just kind of stand on the side and don't do things to promote goodness in the world. So I really liked that aspect. And she probably said some of the most awful things in the whole movie.
She was pretty bad.
She was the worst, and she got her comeuppance at the end. She got what she deserved.
We have 2 cats on the little coffee table.
Uh-oh, there's going to be a fight.
There might be a fight.
All right, so any final thoughts about book and movie?
Both good. Both tell an important story. Both tell a wildly unbelievable story.
Yeah, like when people first heard about this, like they thought it was that Chappelle Show joke.
I think I think even Spike Lee, when the producers came, when Jordan Peele came to him, was like, tell him about it. And Spike Lee was like,
"You mean the Chappelle
show?"
Yeah, because this is a story that was not really out there until the last 12 years. So, and then the movie really ends on a powerful note. It was released on the anniversary of what happened in Charlottesville.
The movie has a scene about like the last chunk of the movie is about Charlotte. It's like a little this stuff hasn't ended.
It's the actual archive footage.
Yep, with even a scene of David talking after the events of Charlottesville,
and like those people with the tiki torches like marching, and it gets real. It's real. It's very raw. I cried both times.
They actually have video footage of the guy who barreled his car through the protesters
and the reactions.
It's
very powerful.
Yep.
And like I could just start crying right now talking about it.
Both times we went and saw the movie in the theater, there was dead silence. Yeah,
like the movie ends on like it's upside down, basically symbolizing that things are not all right.
Yeah.
And it's just sorry.
It's okay.
I've
never seen it since that second time.
I've never seen a movie where everybody didn't know how to react at the end. Like they were just stunned. Well, silence.
I can. There's like two movies, but they're very different kinds of stunned silence.
Okay, well,
because like Infinity War.
Okay, well that's
Infinity War. Everyone's just kind of like,
that's different.
What? But it's different. It's very different. Yeah. It's not like it's the emotional weight of like these are literally real people suffering.
Yeah, it's like you realize that we think we've come so far, but really in like the last couple of years, we really haven't made as much progress as we thought. It's just those people have been in the outskirts and the underbelly of society, and now they feel empowered to come out, and we need to, like, I'm a teacher. I've seen through like the past decade of teaching how like the minds of young people have changed for the better, but there's still those forces in the universe that,
and there's still those kids.
There's always some
that are just they disregard.
Eventually, we'll look back on these times like we look back on the civil rights era of the 1960s and go, what's wrong with these people? Yep. People are going to look at the things that others have done and go, what was wrong with y'all? We're not there yet. We will get there.
Hopefully.
So
hopefully in our lifetime.
All right, now let's go to our next book. So kind of continuing a little theme.
There we go.
All right, so the next book that we're going to read, I've actually read already. I read it at the middle of last year.
No pressure on me.
It's called The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I believe it's a debut novel for her.
Yep.
And there is a movie adaptation coming out next month, so that's why it's tied together. Normally we might have done To Kill a Mockingbird because we're about to start doing that at school, but we will eventually do Mockingbird, but just not right now. So The Hate You Give, and the next book club, because there's a lot of stuff going on and whatnot, we're going to do that as a pre-recorded, edited, released video, and it will be released by the 28th of October, because we do want to try to keep these about one per month, but we think we're going to, for the rest of 2018, go with this pre-recorded one, see how that goes, try to work on our editing skills again.
Yep.
But, you'll see the same familiar elements.
Yeah.
It's just not in a live format.
It's difficult to do this live like this as often. As you can tell, as we postpone this episode 4 days, because, life.
Yeah. So, read the book. It's really great. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm hoping Joe will like it a lot. It is a YA novel, so I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I thought this was probably one of the really good ones, and I've read a lot of YA books because I'm a teacher, and I'm excited to go see the movie. I want to go see it weekend. I want to get all my teacher friends together. We're going to go.
Cool.
You'll
be there.
You got to come too.
I'm not a teacher friend.
Well, you can come later.
Well, then I should have been included in the statement. I'm not your teacher friend.
Well, you can be.
What else do we have on tap this month?
All right, it's Rocktober.
Yeah.
Tell people about Rocktober.
So we are some of those people that have lived underneath a rock for practically our whole life. And have never seen a single full-fledged Rocky movie between the two of us. I've seen bits and pieces of like 2 of them, tops. And Creed 2 is coming out mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
So we realize that's like a perfect amount of time to watch every single Rocky movie and the first Creed movie and do little episodes on it.
Yeah.
So we're going to work on that. I don't know if those are going to be pre-recorded as well, right?
Those are going to be live.
Those are going to be live. Okay. So like every Sunday night during October, which means this Sunday night we're doing like the first two. Probably.
The first Rocky.
At least the first.
It's one per week.
It is going to be one per week?
It's one per week. I work the schedule out.
Okay. Because I feel like with Creed thrown in there, there's like 7 or 8.
It'll work out.
Okay.
I
trust you.
I looked it up. Regular Rocky movies.
We're doing Rocky this Sunday. So
or 6.
Join us for Rocky around the 28th, if not earlier or later. We'll figure it out. Things will modify. We'll have the Hate You Give. And we want to get back to streaming video games, but it's
so hard.
Life's hard, guys.
Yeah.
I'm full-fledged in school now for the semester, and it's stressful, and you're busy all the time.
I'm teaching school, so I have to be prepared for that and like grading assignments. So
between the two of us, it's just like we'll get home and we'll just be like, "You want to do this and get ready for this show?" Nah.
Or I just want to read my books that we read every day in class, and so I just want to keep reading my book because I'm trying to read like one book per week, and I've been doing pretty well so far. So, and the book club, of course, has helped with that.
Brag.
Well, I like reading. Reading is fun.
It's fun.
I'm reading the sequel to Crazy Rich Asians, so it's pretty interesting actually.
Which is a good movie, by the way.
Which was a really good movie.
Anyway, yeah. So that's us for BlackkKlansman. We've been excited to talk about this one because we love the movie, enjoyed the book, though it's a little bit like unbuttered bread. It does its job. It gets to the point, tells a good story, but it
doesn't have a lot of flourish. I don't think it'd be on the AP exam.
I also wouldn't really have it any other way.
Yeah, no, I like the way that it was written. It's just, there's different styles for different genres, and not all memoirs have to be flowery.
No.
It's very matter of fact. So yeah, Ron Stallworth's a really nice guy.
He is a very nice guy. But yeah, that's about it. I think we posted a picture of meeting him too. If not, we'll post one fairly soon.
Yeah, we should have put that in the slideshow.
We should have put that in the slideshow.
Well, next time.
Next time. We're not doing this show.
We'll
figure it out.
The sequel, more BlackkKlansman.
Ron goes to NORAD.
The further adventures of Ron Stallworth after he left the Colorado Springs police force.
Fair.
And worked in Utah. Those are real things.
Yep. Anywho, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you Sunday for Rocky. The first one. The one that's just called Rocky.
Yeah.
Not Rocky 2.
The 1970s Rocky.
Not Rocky 2. Not Rocky versus the Martians. Not Rocky Balboa. But just plain old Rocky. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely evening.